Let's maul in the Central Committee. Let's cringe in the Central Committee. Let's bog in the Central Committee right now.
A second thought video. I was told this was good. I believe that people deserve second chances. So we're gonna try this. We're gonna critique it. Hopefully it's not garbage. We'll see.
This episode and others like it are made possible by the generous support of my patrons on Patreon. If you'd like to help support my channel, consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/secondthought. Nobody likes paying taxes. I think that's something we can all agree upon, regardless of political belief.
Oh, another video to hate on me for being rich. Okay, Bruce Wayne. Bruce Wayne, you're not even a sub. Like, of course we hate you. You're not even a sub.
But as unpleasant as it may be, taxes are the price we pay for living in a functioning society, at least at this point in history. Our taxes pay for roads, schools, fire departments, and public transportation. Of course, American taxes are exceptionally low compared to other countries, and our public resources suffer because of it. Our infrastructure is outdated and fragile, our public transportation nearly non-existent, not to mention the fact that we are the only industrialized nation without some form of universal healthcare. Believe it or not, people who pay more in taxes in our peer nations end up saving money, because things like healthcare, which is incredibly expensive in the US, are free in their countries. But this episode isn't about taxation in general. It's about one specific report that reveals just how little the country's richest people pay in taxes. Spoiler alert, it's way less than you pay. Recently, the independent nonprofit news outlet Pro-Publica released a stunning report titled The Secret IRS Files, in which they reveal the means by which the ultra-wealthy pay next to nothing in taxes, as well as their effective tax rates based on how much they pay compared to the growth of their wealth. For example, Jeff Bezos, the richest person on Earth, paid a true tax rate of 0.98% between 2014 and 2018, despite his wealth growing by nearly $100 billion in that period. The average American pays a rate of 14.6%. So the richest man on the planet, who is currently worth over $190 billion, enjoys a tax rate that is 15 times lower than the average American, who earns in...
Okay. So it's a standard second thought video. Okay, let's grind it out. We're gonna keep grinding the second thought video. It's the standard second thought video.
In their entire lifetime, less than what Bezos accumulates in just 15 minutes. Now,
what is this? What is this? Can someone explain to me what this B-roll is? Someone's getting a haircut at the barber. How does this have anything to do with what he's saying?
there are plenty of weird finance bros who will jump to defend the billionaires by saying things like, look, they're not doing anything illegal. Unrealized gains on things like stocks aren't taxed until you sell. Despite missing the point a little bit, these people are mostly correct. Billionaires like Bezos, Musk, and Buffett, while generally getting up to some shady tax practices, are at least mostly operating within the confines.
I can't believe, did he put my boy Soros in there? He put Soros in there. What the fuck is this? That's our boy Soros. Who do you think funds this stream? I mean, come on, man. Without our daddy Soros, don't do our daddy Soros bad like that. Don't do our daddy Soros bad like that.
Are mostly correct. Billionaires like Bezos, Musk, and Buffett, while generally getting up to some shady tax practices, are at least mostly operating within the confines of the law. They simply take advantage of the way the system is set up to exploit their vast riches, live an obscenely lavish lifestyle, and pay essentially nothing in taxes. I'll let Pro-Publica take the stage for a minute. Here's their short video explaining exactly how these oligarchs exploit the system.
Some of the very richest Americans pay little in taxes compared with how fast their fortunes grow each year. How? They use a tax strategy known as buy, borrow, die. It's like the ultra wealthy are living on
Holy
another
shit! Oh my god! Oh my god, chat. Okay. I'm sorry, we're gonna do drama for a second. We're doing drama for a second. I did a debate with Destiny, and I explained this process to him, and he screeched at the top of his lungs that I was lying and making it up.
The ultra wealthy are living on another planet. Average people need income to pay for basics like housing and food. But the ultra wealthy don't. They can just live on borrowed cash. Step 1, buy. The ultra wealthy buy an asset or build a company or inherit a fortune. As long as they don't sell, they owe no taxes. They keep their income as low as possible, since every dollar they earn can be taxed. Step 2, borrow. They borrow against their holdings and the bank gives them a really good deal.
I'll loan you $10 million with only 3% interest. But if you take a $10 million salary from your company, you'll owe almost 37% to the IRS.
So the ultra-wealthy use loan money to fund their lifestyles. That's how a billionaire can live the most luxurious life imaginable while reporting little to no taxable income. Step 3, die. When they die, these lucky few often use complicated trusts and philanthropic foundations.
If anybody wants to find that part of the debate for me, it'd be hilarious. I have watched the Pro-Publica coverage, and it was so awful. Of course it was. He's an idiot.
Avoid the estate tax, and their heirs can inherit stocks and other assets tax-free.
So this is. Let's go over this one more time. All right. The ultra wealthy don't. They can just live on borrowed cash. I tried to explain this to Destiny, and he screeched that I was making it up.
Cash.
I want that clip.
Step 1,
not the whole
buy.
fucking debate.
The
I know where the whole
ultra-wealthy buy
debate
an
is.
asset or build a company or inherit a fortune. As long as they don't sell, they owe no taxes. They keep their income as low as possible, since every dollar they earn can be taxed. Step 2, borrow. They borrow against their holdings and the bank gives them a really good deal.
I'll loan you $10 million with only 3% interest. But if you take a $10 million salary from your company, you'll owe almost 37% to the IRS.
So the ultra-wealthy use loan money to fund their lifestyles. That's how a billionaire can live the most luxurious life imaginable while reporting little to no taxable income. Step 3, die. When they die, these lucky few often use complicated trusts and philanthropic foundations to avoid the estate tax. And their heirs can inherit stocks and other assets tax-free. A new generation is ultra-wealthy and the cycle starts all over again.
When it's laid out simply like that, without all the intentionally dense tax language and obfuscation, it becomes clear how absurd the whole thing is. The fact that—
Around 21 minutes in? Alright, hold on. Did you timestamp it? No, you're gonna make me do it manually? Okay, cool.
Wait a minute. Do you think fucking...
Why would I borrow against the value of my investment?
Because you don't have to pay any taxes on it! That's why! If you borrow against the value of your shares, you never have to pay taxes! So you can spend money...
Somebody in chat has to tell me, I'm not going to take his word for it. Somebody in chat, do you borrow against the value of... I know that you can take out a loan, for instance, against your 401k or like a Roth IRA, but those you have to be able to show hardship to do that. You can't just do that willy-nilly.
Yes, you can! Of course you can!
No, you can't!
Of course you
These
can
are tax-advantaged investment accounts! You cannot just take fucking loans against them!
No, not those, you idiot! I'm talking about...
You have to be able to show hardship in order to do... That's the whole point of these tax-advantaged accounts!
Destiny, you're arguing against a position I don't have. I'm saying you can borrow against... Now, if you have a 401k, you're a fucking middle-class person. Who gives a shit?
Talking about 401k, you can take it to borrow against it. You can take it a loan against it. But guess what? Your assets don't grow when you have that loan out against it. It's horrible. I'm sorry. If you guys are listening, because I don't know if you get shit financial advice here, please do not take out loans against your 401k. It is one of the worst.
No shit. I'm not advocating for that. I'm saying that if you are rich, if you're Jeff Bezos, does you think he liquidates his shares to buy shit? Or does he borrow against it?
Yes, he needs liquid cash because that's how we purchase things in the United States. You use currency.
You borrow.
You don't trade shares of Amazon.
You borrow against the value of your shares. You don't think he's gonna get... You don't think any bank...
Wait, hold on. Mike, I don't know this, so you can educate me. Can you please explain to me? I have a Vanguard account. How can I...
By the way, that's Destiny in a nutshell. Every single topic, he screeches and screams because he doesn't know what he's doing. And this is what he is. This is what Destiny is. And so when you go into a conversation with him, I got surprised because when I don't know something, when someone introduces a new piece of information to me, I interrogate it like, oh, that's interesting. What do you mean? How does that work? And what he does is he starts screeching immediately. And he does this on thing after thing after thing. And that's why he created this whole Mike leeches viewers shit, or Mike is a grifter, Mike is a tanky, Mike is blah blah blah. He just went after me personally because he's stupid.
I take out a loan against the value of my shares. What is the process for that?
All right, I mean, basically, you can contact your bank. Seriously.
And I'm gonna take out a secured loan against my investment?
Yeah, why couldn't you?
Because I don't want to pay interest on cash that I already fucking have. Why the fuck would I pay interest when I have money in an investment? Why would I take out a loan from the bank and use my own investments to secure that loan and then pay interest to the bank when I could just liquidate my own fucking shares, Mike? Why the fuck would this is the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my entire life?
Because you don't have to pay taxes when you take a loan, but if you liquidated stuff that you have a capital gain in, you'll have to pay taxes. That's why. And then you reduce the value of your ownership stake in whatever your underlying asset is. So if you sell shares, you own less of that company, so your control of that company decreases. Then you have a taxable event.
Most people don't have.
Let me fucking finish. Or you borrow money.
Mike and Destiny, stop molding. I want to play more games.
Hold on, give me like 5 more minutes.
All right, no.
Press ready.
Come play Minecraft.
Just like we're almost done. Go.
Okay. So I can't believe you don't know that rich people take loans against their secured.
I don't think any rich person does.
What?
Anyway.
That Warren Buffett can pay a tax rate of 0.1% is
He's brain dead. He's fucking brain dead. And at this point, that's when he started being like, I'm not gonna debate Mike anymore. He's bad faith, blah blah blah. That's when the attack Mike personally shit started. He's full 100% Dunning-Kruger, hilariously dumb. They don't know anything. This is one of the things that is frustrating. This is where they get me, because like I'll say something that's just well known as just the way rich people do things. How they avoid taxes is, if you say, for example, you're Jeff Bezos, if you have a controlling share or a large stake in Amazon, and the Amazon stock went from, you got it at a value of $10 and it's now worth $10,000 a share, you're not going to sell that because that's massive taxes. But if you just borrow against the value, all you owe is the interest against what you borrowed, which is going to be way less than what it costs you to sell and then pay taxes on it. It's very simple. Someone should ask him this question, provide the clip, if he still thinks rich people don't take out loans against their assets. Well, he never went back and said, Mike was right about this. This is how Destiny operates, is he will make fun of someone or yell at them or act incredulous about like basic facts. And then when the facts are known, when he's disproven, he never goes back and does a correction and be like, actually, Mike was incredibly right. I'm a fucking idiot. I was wrong about that. Maybe Mike knows more than me. He just goes to the next fucking person. Then he will go and do personal attacks. That's why he never revisits any of the things I actually say. That's the same thing with Vouch, and they're the same. Like, they're the exact same.
It's insane. This is a trend that has been worsening for years. Since the 1950s, and accelerating since the 1980s, tax rates among the wealthy and corporations have fallen precipitously, largely because of the misguided American belief in trickle-down economics, and the increasing power of the wealthy as government officials have become more and more dependent on corporate donations. What we're seeing now, and what the Pro-Publica report has revealed, is the result of these regressive tax policies. Thanks to his obscene wealth on paper and the ability to avoid taxation by—
Total moron, just complete moron. And like, one of the things that's really hilarious, and it goes on and on and on. And like, if you go back and watch our old debates, if you actually look, the only thing that, if you look at like the details of everything I said, they're all correct. There's only I may have a factual flub, you know, on some minor detail somewhere along the way, you know, after hours of conversations, occasionally I'll have that. But they have nothing. I've literally said, show me the things that I'm wrong about. And they don't have a single thing. Where do they get the money to pay back the loans? Just borrow from someone else? So this is where they get their small amount of income. The small amount of income is used to pay off loans. So they'll get dividends. They'll have some small amount of income, but a loan payment is going to be over a large period of time, right? So the amount of money you could just take. Here's the thing: you could take a loan, and you could take a portion of the loan and set it aside to make payments on the loan. Because remember, the loan is collateralized by the stocks or the assets they own. You could just take part of the loan and use that part of the loan to make the payments until you need to take another loan. And because their underlying assets are growing in value, their financial position continues to improve as long as the growth of the underlying asset is greater than the interest they own on the loan. They actually get richer by borrowing more. Does that make sense? So like, and so you just borrow more and use that to pay the previous loan. And then you just refinance. You pay the whole loan back. You set aside some cash that you use to repay the loan. And then in a couple, 10, 15 years, you refinance the loan and you get another big loan. You bulk pay off that old loan, and you could just continue to do that. You could just continue to do that as long as the underlying assets are growing, the stocks, the bonds, or whatever, at a faster rate than the interest of the loan. It never ends until you're dead. I listened to Planet Money, and there's a whole system of large money loans with 0% interest because of rock bottom rates. Right, really? They can get zero? I don't know about that. Margin accounts allow investors to borrow against securities they already own, freeing up. Yeah, this is basic. Everybody knows what margin is. And this is obviously something that only rich people do. Middle class earners don't know this because why would they? They never use this strategy. Exactly. Also, if you're middle class, you don't have enough assets in order to make this move. Because if you borrow against your say you have $50,000 in stocks and you try to borrow against them, first of all, you need that money for retirement. So if you only have $50,000 in stocks, it's best to be in a tax-advantaged IRA or 401k, which has special rules for borrowing or withdrawal. But if you have what's known as a discretionary account, meaning you max out all the tax-advantaged vehicles, which you can only do if you're upper middle class or upper class, right? So none of this is relevant to fucking normal people because they haven't maxed out their 401k and they haven't maxed out their IRA. This only matters for people that have a lot of fucking money. I learned about special needs trusts the other day. How you can have money to pay for your needs but still be eligible for SSI. Trusts are a scam. Yeah. Dan. And billionaires borrow through shell companies that hold it. There's a whole bunch of different ways you can do it. I was talking about the top comment in the Second Thought YouTube video. That's what we were just watching. Oh, okay. In a previous life before YouTube, I used to write these kind of loans to these kinds of people. If you want to hear a fun irony on top of all that, it's that the interest payments on these loans are tax deductible in most countries if structured correctly. I never heard it called buy, borrow, die before, though. That gave me a good chuckle because it's absolutely true. Now, remember, chat.
It's called secure transactions. It's like one of the most fundamental parts of our economy.
Okay. So you're telling me that people just take loans out against their investment accounts? Not to mention, wait, I don't even know what this has to do with stock buybacks at this point.
Well, you interrupted me in the middle. I explained how.
So in other words, there you go, chat. He's a fucking moron. Let's continue.
Simply accumulating and not selling, Jeff Bezos has access to functionally limitless amounts of money through generous loans. It's how he was able to buy a custom $500 million super yacht, which is so big it comes with a smaller support yacht, complete with its own helipad. When the weird online billionaire defenders say things like, they're not actually that rich, it's mostly on paper, ask them how he can afford a $500 million yacht, or 5 full floors of luxury New York City apartments, which he plans to combine into a single 17,000 square foot mega condo, or the rest of his $500 million real estate portfolio. If someone can buy all these things, yes, they're that rich. They're just not using their own money to do it.
Wait, what? Wait a minute. If I owned $100 billion in gold, would you say that I wasn't rich? Mike, you don't have dollars. You're not that rich. You have gold. You're not rich. Oh, thank you. Good point. Oh, God, you're right. I'm not rich. I only have $100 billion worth of gold. God, good point. Good point.
Using the loans they can get because of their tremendous
I'm only rich in gold, not in dollars, chat.
Portfolio of assets. Many of the ultra-wealthy have adopted a new habit of claiming they support higher taxes on the rich. This is a great bit of PR, because it costs them nothing to say it. And all the while, they're lobbying behind the scenes to make sure their taxes stay as low as possible. That's the main problem with the system as it exists today. It's not that the US desperately needs tax revenue from the rich, though it would help. It's the fact that these oligarchs can effectively steer the government themselves, without ever having to be elected or be seen supporting one team or the other. And that's the secret. There's really only one team. They may wear different colors, but Democrats and Republicans share...
So, by the way, chat, that's one of the reasons why I don't like to debate with centrists like Destiny, because they're so dumb and ignorant, and they don't know basic facts about the way the economy works, or like how finance works or anything, that they just shout loudly. He did the same thing to Richard Wolff. He did the exact same shit to Richard Wolff in the debate when Richard Wolff was explaining fiduciary duty. And he was just as arrogant to me. If somebody could find that part where he talks about fiduciary duty with Richard Wolff, I want to play with you. I want to play that because it's exactly the same shit as he did to me when I explained how rich people borrow against their stocks. And then after the debate, he goes, I can't even debate with professor, even leftists who are supposedly the smartest don't even know about finance. And it's like, dude, you don't know what fiduciary duty means. Oh, God. It's the same shit, the same move every time. I have no idea how Pepe ID keep going. Because they're stupid, too. You have to understand. They don't know shit either. So when he acts arrogant, like he knows what he's talking about, they buy it. Because it's all social. By the way, they have a parasocial relationship with him. So someone that he doesn't like is bad because he's their friend virtually. So that's how they do it. So they're not listening to like arguments. They're listening for him to tell them whether the person he's talking to is bad or good or not, because he's the ultimate arbiter of that. That's how he operates. Okay, thank you for that meme, Manus. Sounds like Steve has an investment advisor who rips him off with his investment account. I mean, he's not really like... He's rich, but he's not wealthy enough for this stuff to matter, right? Fiduciary duty just means they cannot lie or cheat their investors. It's in the name. Fiduciary means trust, faith. I mean, it's a little bit more than that. But he seems to like he didn't understand that co-ops could sell shares in their company and that would be fine.
For the goal of maintaining the status quo, which leads to further enrichment of the already rich and powerful, the continued worsening of inequality, and the lining of their own pockets thanks to eye-watering corporate donations. There's a quote by Julius Nyerere, the first president of Tanzania, that sums up American politics pretty well. He said, "The United States is also a one-party state, but with typical American extravagance, they have two of them."
Can you give me the AOC Morning Joe SB Harkin?
Two parties that claim to have vastly different politics, but that have proven time and again that all they really care about is corporate interests. For example, Biden ran on being different from his predecessor, but deportations have increased, we still have kids in cages, police budgets have increased, the military budget has increased, and the corporate tax rates will remain the same. Materially, there is next to no difference between Republicans and Democrats, because they both receive funding from the same giant corporate interests. The Democrats would have you believe that they represent progressive policies. But when the Pro-Publica report came out, can you guess what their reaction was? It wasn't to launch an investigation into the state of taxation and corporate power. It was to launch an investigation into how Pro-Publica got a hold of their information. Then, of course, you have the Republicans being authoritarian as usual, with Mitch McConnell saying, "Whoever did this ought to be hunted down and thrown in jail." Think about it. The people who represent us are concerned not with the fact that the richest people on Earth can pay nothing in taxes, but that those incredibly powerful people had their taxes leaked. Government officials don't care about normal people. They are bought and paid for by the very richest people and massive multinational corporations. The ultra-wealthy enjoy access to a completely different system than the rest of us.
And I think this is the actual truth here. Like, you know, these rhetorical flourishes about the Democratic Party are true and their essence. Like, the leaders of the Democratic Party are not going to support this stuff. They support it on paper, but when it actually, the rubber meets the road, you don't see any of this shit actually happening. Like, they're not actually doing anything. And the centrists, who are the people, the neolibs, the dyed-in-the-wool neolibs, they're out there blocking everything. And what did Joe Manchin do? His politics is not talk to voters. His politics is not talk to other politicians. His politics is talking to Wall Street billionaires. What is the West Virginia senator on a conference call with billionaires from Wall Street? It's because these local identities, these state entities are no longer represented by our system. Our system all politics is now national. All the centrists go to the same rich people in the same zip codes to raise all their money. They go to New York, they go to LA, they go to Miami. Maybe there's a couple places in Austin or Dallas or in Texas that they raise money from. But it's the richest of the rich. It has nothing to, he's not raising his money in West Virginia, okay? He is not oriented towards what the people of West Virginia need. He is interested in, what do my corporate paymasters need? And that's what the third way is. That's what Obama is. That's what Biden is. That's what Clinton is. When Bill Clinton came into office, he was a clean break from the traditional liberalism of the post-war Democratic Party, which was compromised, which was not enough, which was on its back foot, which had been losing because of the Vietnam War and the stagflation of the 70s. Traditional liberalism was in crisis. Neoliberalism came in and was injected through Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher, right? But it was injected into the Democratic Party by Bill Clinton and the DLC, the Democratic Leadership Conference, the third way. That is when the Democratic Party severed itself from trade unionism, welfare state liberalism, civil rights, towards a corporate party. And that corporate party has dominated American politics for both parties since 1992. That you can, but point blank, I mean, you could argue that Carter did a lot of neoliberalism as well, which is true.
Congress are rigged for the minority and bribery is legalized.
That's correct. Z-Task 7, that's exactly correct. And what do we have the system that we have? So when people like me come in here and argue for democratic socialism or social democracy, we're not going to get that unless we have labor power, unless we have threats. If the protest movements on the street have to be credible threats to the stability and legitimacy of the country. If we don't do that, then they're not going to budge. And the neoliberals in power, Joe Manchin in particular, he's not alone. He's not the only neoliberal. There's 7, 8, 9, 10 of them at least in the Congress right now, and they're all hiding behind him.
Most normal people receive an hourly wage or a salary. We're paid for our labor, and a cut of that money goes to the IRS in the form of taxes. If you've ever wondered why people like Elon Musk receive a fairly small salary, it's not because they're being self-aware or giving more to their
Judy did raise one decent point with Professor Wolf, but immediately left it behind to screech. He pointed out that worker-owned co-ops would still operate as firms, and co-op firms still have been incentivized to maximize profit. The profit is shared within the firm, but it's still based on exploitation of others outside the firm. I'm sure Wolf has a great response, but he never got to hear it. Well, that's why we have states, Pukernator. That's why we have states. States regulate transactions between firms. States regulate the conditions that firms are allowed to operate in. The corporate structure we have now is a legal fiction, invented and enforced by the state. IBM, AT&T, Apple, Microsoft, they only exist because the United States government and its corresponding states created those entities and gave them the authority to enter into contracts, to use the court system, to own property. We could change the terms of those corporate entities. They are not laws of nature. They are rather legal frameworks. So if you say we're going to end that kind of structure for firms in the economy and we transfer to worker owned and worker managed, and that's the only acceptable framework, And then as far as relations between firms, we can use regulation and state intervention to prevent exploitation. That's what a real social democrat or democratic socialist economy that was transitioning from a purely market-based one to something that had more worker control. That is what the state is for. I didn't hear Richard Wolff argue for fucking anarchism, okay? He argues for social democracy, democratic socialism with a state. So if we're transitioning from one set of organizations that we created and sustained through law, corporations exist through law and the state, no other reason.
Their workers, it's because they'd rather be compensated in ways that aren't taxable. Like we saw in the Pro-Publica explainer, instead of receiving a $10 million salary and paying 37% tax on it, the rich can just accumulate stock and borrow against it at a tiny interest rate, thus exempting them from the taxes the little people have to pay. The deification of oligarchs is fairly new in America. These days, you have people working 70 hours a week, making $30,000 a year, who will rabidly defend billionaires, because for some bizarre reason, they think they'll be rich one day too. This hyper-individualist bootstraps mentality has completely destroyed class consciousness in America. In the past, the very rich were looked upon with suspicion and often hatred, and rightly so. Then, as now, the ultra-rich accumulated their wealth through the exploitation of others. During the Civil War, the rich had to disclose their income and tax payments. For example, in 1865, the annual income of moguls like William Astor and Cornelius Vanderbilt was published in the New York Times. Why? Because the public deserved to know what these people were making, especially because it was the American workers doing the labor that enriched those who owned the means of production. Unsurprisingly, these oligarchs used their massive wealth to force a repeal of the wartime tax law shortly after the war ended. Fast forward to today, and billionaires are nearly untouchable. We can't tax them, we can't criticize them because they're, quote, job producers. We're indoctrinated to hold them in high regard simply because of their massive wealth. So what can we do? How can we make the radical changes necessary to fix the absurd money problems this country faces? One thing is certain, electoralism isn't enough. People will say, call your representatives, vote for progressive politicians, make your voice heard. Except those in power don't listen to what the people want. We have mountains of data that shows the only opinions that matter are those of corporate donors. The only thing in this country.
So there's a couple things here. Bernie Sanders is not the same thing as Joe Biden. And Bernie Sanders would have listened to our preferences. This is like a measure of the existing status quo and then a declaration that the status quo can't change. There have been left-wing politicians elected around the world who have done significant things for their people. Why do you think the British have the NHS? Because they voted for Adlai Stevenson in the Labour Party in 1946, and they threw Winston Churchill out on his ass. That's why they have it. So if you're like, wow, we're the only country that doesn't have it, I wonder why that is. Well, because we haven't had people in power that want to establish that. I think he means we should do more than just vote, sure. But this is like...
country that is truly bipartisan is the desire to maintain the parasitic economic status quo in order to further line the pockets of the wealthy and powerful.
So this is where, okay, I just disagree with this rhetoric. I'll tell you why I disagree with this rhetoric. It's not because I think the Democratic Party is good. The Democratic Party isn't good. But the Democratic Party does include Bernie Sanders and AOC and people that almost certainly radicalize Second Thought here. Second Thought here believes what he believes because of the Bernie Sanders presidential campaign, okay? Let's be real here. And there are individuals within the Democratic Party that we need to target for removal if we want to see change. Now, if he's not going to call for armed revolution right now, then all this shit is pointless apathy.
Historically, the only thing that has kept these people in check has been fear. Now, for any alphabet agencies monitoring my videos, I am not advocating for violence. I'm simply stating a historical fact that the only times we've seen real, radical change have been in societies where normal people get so fed up with the status quo that they took matters into their own hands. Up until recently, I would have said any kind of mass popular uprising was highly unlikely in the US. But given what we've seen in the past year and a half, the strikes, protests, riots, and so on, it's become apparent that public sentiment seems to be shifting slightly away from electoral politics and towards a populist anger at those who control the levers of power. The critical missing piece, the bit that's been absent
Populist doesn't mean, it means literally nothing.
in the US for the last 100 years, is class consciousness. We're still very much in a sort of cultural identity politics tug-of-war between Republican and Democratic voter bases. But I think people are finally beginning to rediscover the strong American tradition of class solidarity and mass organization. The Pro-Publica report is just the latest bit of fuel for the fire. Slowly but surely, average Americans are beginning to wake up to the fact that they've been given a raw deal.
That was a better second thought video than normal, for sure. Mostly because of this part.
Now, they use a tax strategy known as buy, borrow, die. It's like the ultra-wealthy are living on another planet. Average people need income to pay for basics like housing and food. But the ultra-wealthy don't. They can just live on borrowed cash. Step 1, buy. The ultra-wealthy buy an asset, or build a company, or inherit a fortune. As long as they don't sell, they owe no taxes. They keep their income as low as possible, since every dollar they earn can be taxed. Step 2, borrow. They borrow against their holdings, and the bank gives them a really good deal.
I'll loan you $10 million with only 3% interest. But if you take a $10 million salary from your company, you'll owe almost 37% to the IRS.
So the ultra-wealthy use loan money to fund their lifestyles. That's how a billionaire can live the most luxurious life imaginable while reporting little to no taxable income. Step 3, die. When they die, these lucky few often use complicated trusts and philanthropic foundations to avoid the estate tax. And their heirs can inherit stocks and other assets tax-free. A new generation is ultra wealthy, and the cycle starts all over again.
If you guys want to know one of the strategies, this is one of the times that when I was in law school, this is what really started to radicalize me, was when I was in an estates and trusts class, which is basically about planning wealthy people's ways of avoiding taxes and remaining wealthy. And then that's when I realized the myths about like rich people equal smart was totally annihilated in my head. There was a concept that when I heard it, I was like, wait a minute, why do we have this? Why do we have this in our society? It's called a spendthrift trust. Check this shit out.
Research shows that people who receive an inheritance lose half of it due to spending or bad investments. If your loved ones are financially irresponsible, you should consider setting up a spendthrift trust. A spendthrift trust puts restrictions on a beneficiary's access to trust principal. Essentially, the beneficiary cannot access trust assets at will or promise it to anyone else. Because the beneficiary cannot readily access trust funds, neither can his or her creditors. Instead of having direct access to trust property, the beneficiary receives benefit from the trust through the designated trustee. This benefit could be in the form of a regular payment from the trust or in the form of goods or services bought for the beneficiary by the trustee. How and when the trustee makes payments to the beneficiary is determined by you and set forth in the terms of the trust.
Trust services available through Members Trust Company. CFS and Coastal Credit Union are not affiliated with Members Trust Company.
Non-deposit investment.
Anyway, so why is this important? If you're watching this, you might be like, Mike, why do I care about this? Here's the important part. This basically means that you could be a total rich fucking moron and just gambling and buying drugs and going around and just no job, just wandering around, throwing money out your pockets, just wasting it. And let's say you go and borrow money. You go and borrow money for your Ferrari. You crash the Ferrari and your bank account's empty. And the bank comes to you and says, you owe us money. You didn't get insurance on that Ferrari. You say, sorry, don't have any assets. And they say, wait a minute, you've got $50 million in that trust over there. And you're like, sorry, spendthrift trust, you're just fucked. And they can't go after that 50 million. You have that 50 million, but it's totally protected. And you don't do shit. It doesn't matter that you don't have a job, you're an idiot, you spend the money irresponsibly. No one can go after that money. It's protected from creditors. So, fuck you. And what do? Next month, you wander over to your attorney's office. He hands you another $100,000 in cash, or whatever the interest you're making is, and you're good to go. Now, if the creditor can catch you while you still have that 50 grand in your hand, then they can go after that new 50 grand. But they can never, ever touch the spendthrift trust. Well, Mike, what else can you do to get rich? Well, this is called the GRAT. Here's another thing. So when I saw this, I was just like, oh my God, the system is totally rigged. The system is totally rigged. I was dumb and thought I understood tax law. But when I actually studied tax law at the real level, and I learned about spendthrift trusts, when I learned about GRATs. What is an annuity trust? Let's discuss annuities, since there's such a large component of GRATs. An annuity is a financial mechanism wherein you contribute funds or assets, like shares of stock or options, into an account, and then that account distributes money back in equal installments to you on a regular basis, either immediately or at some point in the future. Therefore, at its simplest term, an annuity trust enables you to contribute funds or assets into a trust, and then that trust distributes an annuity to a beneficiary on a regular basis. With a grantor retained annuity trust, the person setting up the trust is the grantor. So when you retain the annuities from the trust, those payments distribute back to you. How does a GRAT work? Beyond simply paying out annuities, GRATs are really used for their ability to minimize your tax liability. For estate planning purposes, a GRAT is a type of gifting trust that allows individuals to transfer high-yielding and or rapidly appreciating property or assets like stocks, again, typically shares of stock, to a beneficiary with a minimal gift or estate tax. The trust also pays out an annuity to the grantor every year, which can work as part of your retirement income strategy. The grantor sets up an irrevocable trust, including the term of the trust, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, etc., and contributes funds or assets into the account as a lump sum. Every year, the grantor is then paid out a fixed annuity, usually a set percentage of the original amount of the trust. For example, if you set up a GRAT with $100,000 and a fixed annuity of 6%, you would receive $6,000 every year, regardless of how much is left in the trust in subsequent years. The exception is the value of the trust drops below the annuity payment amount. In that case, the annuity payment, it will be what's left of the trust assets, and no further payment will be made from the trust. Finally, at the end of the trust terms, any remaining funds, including any appreciation on the assets, is transferred to the beneficiaries. So I don't know if you're understanding how this is working. Do you guys understand? Hey, Dr. Funkenstein, thanks for the 18 months. Do you understand what's happening here? So I give this trust $100,000. It's a GRAT, right? And I say, I'm going to be paid out of that. Well, here's the thing. If I took $100,000 and I put that into, say, Amazon stocks, right? If the Amazon stocks go up in price faster than the annuity payment, right? So say the annuity owes me 6%, but Amazon stock goes up 10% a year. At the end of my trust period, there's going to be millions of dollars in that. But the IRS is going to treat that as if it's zero. And whoever is the beneficiary of the trust is going to get that money tax fucking free. Any income you earn from the appreciation of your assets in the trust is subject to regular income tax, and any remaining funds and assets that transfer to a beneficiary are subject to gift taxes. However, there's a nuance to the rules of how you determine what's owed in gift taxes that could enable you to avoid them altogether. Again, tax-free, millions of dollars to your kids. Here's how they do it. The gift tax is determined at the time the grant is created by subtracting the grantor's retained interest in the trust, i.e. the totality of the annuity payments, from the fair market value of the assets you gifted to the trust. The IRS then assumes that the trust-owned assets will generate a return equal to 120% of the applicable federal annual midterm rate, called the Section 7520 rate, for the month that the assets are transferred to the trust. Any appreciation in excess of the Section 7520 rate then passes to the beneficiaries gift tax free. Literally giving millions of dollars to your kids tax fucking free. Since the gift tax amount is determined when the trust is created, the value of the annuity interest ends up being a theoretical or projected figure. So if you set your annuity to pay out the entirety of the principal value over the term of the trust, plus the assumed depreciation according to the Section 7520 rate, you effectively zero out the trust remainder, meaning you owe nothing in gift taxes. Because grants are typically populated with high yield assets over the trust term, it's expected, or at least hoped, that those assets will appreciate significantly in value to something greater than the value of the projected growth rate based on federal tables. Essentially, when you set up your annuity payment schedule, your goal is to get the entire original trust value paid back to you annually, leaving the appreciation to transfer to your beneficiaries without incurring any gift tax. And here is an example. 5-year term, principal of $5 million, annual annuity interest rate 0.40, rate of return 6%, annual GRAP payment $1,012,000, total payments received over turn $5,060,000, right? Amount owed in gift taxes 0. Remainder passing to beneficiaries, $995,348. They get $9,995 tax-free. Which means if you had just given them $1 million when you died in a check, they would have owed, assuming they were past the fucking, okay, that's different. If you just gave them $1 million check, they would owe $400,000 in gift taxes. So you literally say you avoid paying $400,000 in a minimum $1 million you give to your fail son. That is how it works. They don't pay taxes. Taxes are for the little people. They're for you. They're for me. How do I set one up for myself? Do you have millions of dollars? So I just showed you two things, spendthrift trusts and grats. Do you understand how being rich has nothing to do with how smart you are? You could be rich, and most of the rich people you know are rich because of this shit. They're not rich because they fucking did anything. And these are just two examples that I want you to know about. Just two. There's many, many more. So Mike, how does this tie into stock buybacks? Because stock buybacks, the reason why this ties into stock buybacks is because executives are not paid a salary, which will be taxed at an income tax rate. They're given stock options. And so those stock options are calls, which mean they have the opportunity to buy a share of stock at a certain price. So if the executive can make the stock go up, the value of their options goes up, meaning the value of their wealth goes up. And since they're not being paid a salary, the way for them to get paid more is to make the stock go up. And so what they will do is they'll buy back stocks, what is a stock buyback? Well, the open market stock buyback, which AOC and everybody who's not an idiot is against, is basically you are running the company. You go to the company and say, hey, you have $1 billion in cash. Instead of taking that $1 billion, let's say AMD, instead of taking that $1 billion and building new chip factories so that we can make more video cards so there's not a shortage of chips, I'm going to take that $1 billion and instead of building chip factories, which we know we need, I'm going to buy $1 billion of AMD stock back instead. And that makes the stock go up. That makes my stock option go up. That makes my wealth go up. And guess what? Since I'm not being paid a salary, I don't have to pay any fucking taxes on that. I get to borrow against the increased value of the share. I avoided taxes. My wealth went up. I made AMD worse. And AMD, because of AMD's interest of the company, are not aligned with mine. Because AMD over the next 5 years, if they had invested that $1 billion in, say, a chip factory, 5 years from now, AMD would be making more money. But here's the thing. I might not be the CEO in 5 years. Why the fuck do I care about AMD in 5 years? I can drive the stock price up right now by buying back stock, which will make my compensation go up. And now you see why there's a misalignment between the company's interest and the economy's interest and the individual interest of the CEO. That's called an agency problem. This is basic economic shit if you're not a fucking moron. So we know this. So stock buybacks might be bad. And that's why anybody who's center left, and this is not just an AOC thing, this is a Chuck Schumer thing, this is anybody who's not a fucking moron, realizes that stock buybacks are increasing income inequality and making our economy grow slower because we're not investing in actual tangible things in businesses. We're taking their cash and buying back stocks. And here's the thing. GE stock buyback. I want to show you something, chat. This is amazing. This is not just theoretical. At GE, GE's decade of stock buybacks may come back to haunt the company. GE may be wishing it could take back a string of stock buybacks. One of the charges leveled by accounting sleuth Henry Markopoulos in his explosive report, General Electric, a bigger fraud than Enron, is that GE was buying back tons of stock with cash desperately needed to sustain its failing long-term care business. GE spent $53.9 billion over a decade to repurchase 2.07 billion shares. Is it possible to make it so they don't use the calls for 5 years, so they have to care about long-term planning? I mean, there's all sorts of shit that we could do that we're not doing. My dad started his career at the SEC in 1965. He's been rarely gets buybacks ever since. He really has a memo about how he wrote about it in his office. Final Boeing House investigation found they were doing the same and it contributed to ship plane design. Of course! So when somebody's a dumb shit, like this fucking little rat weasel, Destiny, speak sense to a fool and they call you foolish. When people realize their power and say, no, I'm not working for you until all this starts working for me, things change. But first threats come. So do incentives to work. Remind us how buybacks used to be illegal. So stock buybacks, what are known as open market stock. Let's see if we can find a video on this. Oh God, Investopedia. Investopedia has 6 buybacks. Imagine being to the right of Investopedia. Holy shit. Buying back or repurchasing shares. Okay, so under Ronald Reagan repealed regulations that prevented companies from doing what is known as an open market stock buyback. What's an open market stock buyback? That's where the company goes to the market and takes $1 billion or whatever the amount of the buyback is and says, we're buying back shares of our stock at market. And they just buy until they run out of $1 billion, right? They just start buying stocks until that $1 billion runs out. Well, what happens is that if you know how stocks are sold, there's a bid and an ask. So there's somebody on the market right now who wants to buy Google, right? Let me see if I can look at this. Bid, ask, Goog. I don't know if there's actually going to be like a chart of this, but basically there's a bunch of people who are bidding to buy 100 shares of Amazon at X price, and there's a bunch of people offering to sell a bunch of Amazon at another price. And what the market does is it links up those people. Oh, somebody wants to buy 100 shares at $10 a share. Oh, somebody wants to sell 100 shares at $10 a share. And they link those two people up. That's what the market does, right? But there's what's known as the bid-ask spread is the difference between the people what people are bidding at and what people are offering at. And that's why the stock goes up and down, because new people come in or people that are in there change their price, right? Well, if you come in with $1 billion and say, I'm buying $1 billion worth of shares, you just go to all the people that are offering to sell their stocks at whatever price and you buy them all up. And when you buy all those people off, the stock price goes like this. It shoots straight up because you're buying all the people out who are on the market. Now, there might be a bunch of people on the sidelines who would sell the shares for that price, but they don't like keep a sell order on their shares. So you get the short-term spike where the $1 billion gets poured in, and all the people that are offering to sell the stock get bought out, and it very quickly rises in price. Then a bunch of people who are on the sidelines see that the stock price is shooting up, and they go, oh shit, and they come in to sell their stocks as well. And then it goes back down. So over the next few days, the stock price typically starts to settle back down. And so that is called an open market stock buyback. That allows, like, say you're a CEO, you know, okay, I just ordered us to buy $1 billion of shares back. I'm going to sell into my own company. Wait a minute. You're saying that the company should spend its cash to buy the stock right now because the stock is undervalued, right? But then you're going to sell into the company that you just ordered? You're on both sides of the transaction. And that's a conflict of interest. So basically, the company takes its money and puts it in the CEO's or executive's pockets. And the company's now worse off because it used to have $1 billion in cash, but now it doesn't have $1 billion in cash. So the company's balance sheet is worse. The company has less money. That's why they sold shares in the first place, to generate cash. So if they buy back stocks, necessarily they are worse off. The company's balance sheet is worse. It has less assets. Because when a company buys its own stock back, those stocks are deleted. They're ripped up. They go away. And so that is why open market stock buybacks are bad. Before that, before Reagan, that was considered market manipulation, and that was illegal. That was illegal. What you had to do was what's known as fixed bid stock buybacks, where the company would say, we're going to buy $1 billion of shares at $33 a share. Anybody who wants to come and sell their stock to us at $33 a share can come and sell it to us. And we'll keep buying while it's at $33 a share. That was called fixed bid. And so you would have a very predictable number of like, okay, they're going to buy back stocks at this price, and we know that it's going to go there. And the manipulation was not there because it was a slow, steady number, and everybody knew what that number was. And so there was less incentive and less likelihood of a short-term spike. And so, and by the way, companies, because there was less of a short-term spike, they didn't do that very much. They would just pay their pay they would pay in dividends. They would invest in the company more. Fixed bids were pretty uncommon. Companies didn't really buy their shares back that much. But once executives started getting paid in shares, once executives started being paid with options, and their incentive for the stock going up was their personal incentive, suddenly, and then Reagan repealed that regulation. Suddenly, now everybody's buying back stocks all the time. And the investment in R&D and capital improvements and inventory, all of that went down. Companies stopped doing the shit that the company was there for, and they did more financial manipulation of their stock. Because that's what would benefit the executive's pocketbook. American economics degrees are basically homeopathic doctors. They got a degree at obscure bullshit that was designed to give a vague understanding of how a market works, because if they wanted to be honest about markets, they just read capital. I mean, there's a reason why economics degrees are different than business degrees. Economics is theology, business is practice. And business school teaches you about class consciousness. Business school teaches you about unions. Business school teaches you about how to outsource. Business school teaches the most Marxist practice comes out of business schools. So there you go. Now you know. Now you know. I just wanted to give you an example of how incredibly dumb Destiny is. Fucking stupid. That was years ago, but you got it. We do politics here every morning starting at 10 a.m. 10 a.m. Eastern, 7 a.m. Pacific. You can watch us here on Twitch. We're the morning guy. The morning politics guy. Politics Frogs in every single day, same time, 10 a.m., day in, day out. And we carry you through your morning and early afternoon politics needs. And if you need more, Mike from PA, we have a YouTube channel. We talked about suburbs, the My Pillow guy, Ted Cruz. We talked about DSA. Amazing. Making fun of Tim Pool. Amazing. Look at all of these amazing videos. Get in there, watch them. We have me on Twitter. You got to follow me on Twitter, chat. I'm at 20,614 subs. That means I got like 40 followers on Twitter in the last day. You can do better than that. You can do better than that. Go follow us on Twitter. And of course, join the Discord, where we have an incredible community of left-wing streamers. We have left-wing community. We talk about the stream. We talk about politics. There's gaming content. It's a really awesome, supportive place. Direct action, mutual aid, and you can just let off some steam. And also, you can help produce the show. One of the things I do is I look at the links that are put into the news content suggestions chat room on the Discord. Join the Discord, come hang out, and maybe what you want me to talk about will be part of the next show.